Hello and welcome to the War Story podcast. I'm your host, Gareth Jones. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. Good to see you, or whatever the equivalent is for this. And if you are joining us for the first time, welcome. As you probably guessed from the name of the podcast, what we do here, it's very simple. We have interesting guests on who tell us their war stories. And we have another one of those today. His name is Paul Glazebrook. He served in Northern Ireland with 2 Royal Green Jackets, which then became 4 rifles, and he served with them in Basra in 2007, Operation Telic 10. I just want to give a quick apology, guys, that both Paul and I were recording from, I was going to say remote locations. It's not like we're in the Congo, but apparently if you're 10 minutes outside of a town in the UK, then your Wi-Fi is pretty shit. And so there were times where the audio or the buffering dropped. We lose a bit of audio quality, so do apologise about that. Just bear with it. It really is. It's only now and again in a couple of our podcasts, so it's not a massive issue. But just wanted to give you a heads up. If you enjoyed today's episode, if you find it valuable, if you find it useful, if you learn from it, anything like that, please do give it a share. Please give Paul a follow on Instagram if you're interested in picking up a copy of his book, which I read myself. I think he's got a real talent for it, and I was laughing out loud in some of the places. He's got a great little comical eye and a comical turn of phrase, as I'm sure you will agree after listening to the podcast. So without further ado, let's get on into it. All right, Glazy, welcome to the podcast, mate. Good to have you on. All right, mate. We've already discussed your hair off camera. What else have we discussed? Epstein files. So let's get into the war story side of things.
Yeah.
Before we kind of go down where you served and who with it, everything, just give us a bit of background about where you're from and your kind of your route into joining the British Army.
Well, I'm originally from Harlow in Essex, which is why I sound like cats fighting when I talk. That's like the worst accent ever. I joined. My dad was a Green Jacket. So he was in the Green Jackets during the 70s, one of the original falling plates, and essentially he just talked up the whole army thing whilst I was a kid. And much like a lot of people that go in the army, like home life wasn't like fantastic. So I basically just ended up just going in at 16. I went to Harrogate, like Hogwarts, and just straight from school, straight in. I wasn't really interested in doing anything but army. It was just, as I was growing up, my dad just sold this army thing to me, and it was just perfect. It fit me perfect. So academics wasn't really my thing. I just wanted to get in the mob, really.
From what you've seen in your own experience and other people's, obviously Britain now is the only, I think it's the only NATO country that allows kind of people to enlist 16. What do you think of that system, good and bad?
I think it's good because you're so malleable at that age. It's a bit like Jarhead. You're an empty vessel waiting to be filled. You haven't really experienced the trappings of adult life, work, stuff like that, and so you're absolutely perfect to be moulded into whatever the military need you. But in hindsight as well, though, I think that does make it a lot more difficult for people to adjust when they do eventually leave, because you are so institutionalized. At a young age, like they break you down, they make you into a soldier, and it is really hard to turn that off when you leave. It's almost like if you spend 22 years in, it's probably the same thing, but I don't know any different. I mean, I can't actually remember what I was even like as a kid before joining the forces. It was just, that's all I remember. And so I will never be able to turn off the soldier thing. I think that's because I went in so young. I mean, I just turned 16, so yeah.
Yeah, okay, mate. So what were your, like, with the training at Harrogate? Is there anything particular that stands out to you about that time you want to talk about?
I think Harrogate's good. It's really good because it gives you. Is Harrogate still running? Are they still doing that?
I think so.
Yeah, I've no idea.
I mean, I'm not sure, mate. I tell you what, you keep talking. I'll ask Mr. Google.
I wonder if they are, but it was really good because it does give you a good basis. Like phase 1 when you normally go in is just real sort of quick. A few weeks and you're straight into phase 2. But phase 1, Harrogate is essentially phase 1, and it's a year. So you get a year to really get into the groove of being in the army. You're treated exactly like you are in basic training, like complete shit for the year. But you're in there with all the other 16-year-olds. You're going through the same thing. And it was really good. Get a few MVQs out of it, a bit of adventure training and stuff. The only downside for me was the fact that I had Lee Clegg as my PTI. I don't know if you know this bloke. He's a ex-paratrooper, and back in the day, his patrol shot and killed a couple of joyriders in Northern Ireland, and he was sent to jail for manslaughter. And after a few newspaper campaigns, he was released, and they sent him to Harrogate, almost like, I guess, like a posting or a punishment posting, whatever. And he had an axe to grind with the army, and he grinded it on our platoon pretty much, and it was a fucking lick, mate.
Harrogate is still open, by the way.
It is? Oh, bloody hell, that's good.
Yeah. I need to get one of them Jamies like Joe Rogan has for pulling this information.
Yeah, mate, just Jamie, just look it up, get it up on the screen. Yeah.
Pull that shit. Pull that shit up, Jim. So when is it, when is it then that you go and start doing your more specialised infantry training?
So you do, basically everyone's in the same boat. So yes, good question, actually, because everyone in Harrogate goes to everything. I mean, I had guys in my platoon that went to the tank regiments, artillery, all sorts of stuff. And then it's only when you do phase 2. So we were then sent to Catterick. We did our phase 2 up there. A lot of guys in the green jackets and like light infantry back in the day would go to Winchester and stuff, but we went to Catterick, and it was the entire platoon made up of guys from Harrogate. It's the first time this had ever happened. So the phase 2, like screws, were expecting, fucking excellent soldiers that had been in the army already a year, and they just had to basically just push them towards the door and show them a couple of bits. But it wasn't the case. We were just a bunch of monks, as per usual. That's where we do our sort of infantry stuff, but it was more condensed down. I think phase 2 back in the day was 12 weeks for infantry, but we had to do it in 8. So we sort of squeezed it in. It was pretty hectic, but really good. I mean, I don't know where you did yours. Did you go Catterick?
No, I was NCA or reserves as it's called now. So I did 2 weeks.
Nice.
Yeah, you do. You essentially, I think. I don't know if there's an actual set time, but over a period, you have to do a certain amount of weekends and days to kind of make up what would essentially be your first phase, and then you go up to Catterick for 2 weeks up there and kind of jam it in. But then obviously there's still like a lot of stuff to learn when you get back, if you ever learn it. To be honest, mate, I think I picked up most of the stuff when I went on tour. So why was it that yours was squeezed into 8 weeks then rather than 12?
I think it's because we had for phase 1 we had a year rather than, I don't know what phase 1 normally is, maybe 12 or 14 weeks or something, but ours was right. Our phase 1 was a year, so they were expecting us to be like a little bit better. I mean, we were probably fitter than people would normally be and stuff like that. But in terms of actual infantry tactics and things like that, no, we'd just been on a few more exercises and there wasn't really that much more. Harrogate's, to me, it was a little bit of a waste of time. I wish I'd just gone straight in and done the, phase 1, phase 2, because I was just felt like I was marking time for a year, just waiting to get to Catterick to get the infantry shit done so I could get to the battalion.
What is the reason that you have to go to Harrogate at 16 and that you can't go straight to? Are you aware of that?
I think it's probably because you'll be violently consumed by a Falklands veteran at some point in the barracks. I think it's probably against the Geneva Convention to send a 16-year-old to an infantry battalion. Right. But yeah, I don't know what the reason is. I know that when we got posted from Germany back to the UK, there were lads waiting in the UK that were 17 who they didn't bother sending them to Germany because they couldn't go Bosnia or Kosovo anyway. So they were just waiting. So I think, obviously, I don't know if you can deploy until you're 18 anyway, so it's a bit of a waste of time sending guys to battalion. I don't really know the score of it, really.
Yeah, it's well, as far as I know, it's still 18 because we'd have lads in Iraq like sent out on their 18th birthday. Like as soon as
happy birthday.
Happy birthday on the plane, and they'd be doing beer party until then, which I always just say it's just one of these legal things that you just like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like yesterday he wasn't allowed to fight and today he can. It just seems daft to me.
Yeah,
you soldier. I mean, like if anything, I can understand the argument of saying you can't join the army until 18 because you can't vote until you're 18, so you can't make the decision on being in the army until you're 18. I understand that argument. But if you're going to allow someone to make the decision to join the army, it's like, at that point, it's,
Yeah, exactly, yeah. I think it should be down to the individual soldier, because I know that when we was in Harrogate, if you wanted to leave, I think you pretty much had to get your parents involved, which is ridiculous considering you're in an army. I think your parents had to be involved to some extent. But yeah, in terms of like deploying, I think it should be down to the individual soldier. You know, you've been through your training, you're trained, you're good to go. I mean, look at the guys in World War II. I mean, heavily like sort of in World War II. Some of the lads that you probably read about, probably 15, 16, maybe even younger.
Well, they were actually, so they had an age thing as well.
Right.
Even in the First World War, they had an age, and they had an age thing. But what would happen is you'd get a lad would go in the recruiting office. You get asked, "How old are you?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm 17," and they'd be like, "Go outside and have a birthday and come back in." And the lad would go outside, come back in. "How old are you?" 18. All right, sign here.
Bosh.
And then you did have examples of sometimes they'd find out that lads were, or so like, I mean, a lot of people would know, wouldn't they? But somebody would find out and go, bollocks to that, we're sending you back until you're 18 and stuff. So there was a bit more back and forth on it. And then the Second World War, I think if you look at like the D-Day numbers, there was I think a 16-year-old lad killed in Normandy. And there were some 17-year-old ones killed in Germany. I'm not sure about in between those two, but generally speaking, it was the same kind of thing. You know, the lads would be 18 and get sent out. So it does seem to have been a thing for a while, but I just always found the birthday thing quite funny because it'd just be like, yeah, yesterday you can't shoot someone, today you can. Like, I always found it a bit odd. Like,
it's just some sort of little box ticked somewhere on a form that says, okay, it's legal or whatever. Yeah.
Well, you know, we've had plenty of lads on this podcast as well who have said that a lot of them have got to battalion at 17, couldn't go on the deployment, and then how much then that sets them back when the lads come back because you've been sat on rear party. It's hard enough to join a battalion as it is, and then all of a sudden, not only are you joining a battalion, but they've just come back off a war tour, and now you're not just a crow, you're the tour dodging fucking 17-year-old.
Oh, mate.
Crow, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I turned up to Germany to the 2nd Battalion Green Jackets, I think about a week or so after they got back from, I think it was Bosnia, maybe. And Bosnia or Kosovo, one or the other, and every single conversation, everything that anyone ever spoke about was that, and I just couldn't join it. I was a crow bag, all that kind of stuff. I had to wait years to go to Northern Ireland to even do any form of tour, and I just wasn't like the Bosnia and Kosovo boys. It was like difficult, which is a funny subject to actually bring up. Guys joining the army now these days, like we're relics, me and you. You know, Iraq, Afghanistan, we are now like relics. You know, do you think that we're going to be fighting any wars like we did? Do you think we're actually going to get involved, boots on the ground, anymore moving forward?
It's a difficult one, mate, because I do think things usually seem to come around in like 20-year cycles quite often. But because Iraq and Afghan went on for so long, I don't know if, you know, because I think that these cycles probably we go to war, people realize war shit. The public, because there's always an excuse to go to war somewhere. You can always find the reason, right? You know, ain't sure you could just throw a dart at a map of the world and find a reason to go and get your troops in that country today if you wanted to. But
oil,
oil, or you know, there's always like usually a convenient pretext or two. But I think it costs a lot of money, and it wears down the public's support of it. And then gradually, like anything in life, you know, it's why we repeat a lot of the same mistakes as human beings because, you know, you forget maybe you forget what happened 20 years ago and you go, oh, that sounds like a good idea. You see it happening now, mate. People went with the Iran thing happening the other week, trotting out the same exact stuff that was for the Iraq invasion. Which was almost 20 years ago. And the amount of people who were just not questioning, I'm not saying it's wrong, but the amount of people who just swallow it hook, line, and sinker and go, oh, well, we've got to go war for weapons of mass destruction. So hang on a minute.
Yeah.
I'm, you know, old enough and reasonably young enough to remember that this would happen 20 years ago. We might want to maybe just, you know, be sure about this one. But it's to say, so that's what I mean, mate. Like, it doesn't take very long before I think as a nation, you kind of get that appetite to go back a bit. And, you know, with this stuff as well, usually the people who are most vocal for supporting the war are the ones who are too old or have no skin in the game anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. War is very attractive to people who have never experienced it.
Yeah, right. Exactly, mate. Like, so yeah, but yeah, in terms of, I'm sure, I think it happens to every generation. Like, it seems to happen, you know, like you had the people who served in the the 80s and might have done some Northern Ireland stuff, or you might have gone to Bosnia, but maybe no one fired their weapons. Or if you stayed in for another 10 years, you might have been on the Iraq invasion. I think even blokes doing the 22, it's no guarantee that you're ever going to actually get out somewhere. Because even when something happens, it's not everyone that gets sent, is it? So it's it's a funny one, mate. There's just, it's one of those jobs where it's one of those few jobs in the world. I'm not sure if I can even think of any of us off the top of my head where you might do it for 20 years and never actually get to do the pinnacle of the job. Like, because going on exercises and living in camp, that is part of the job. It's not like you don't do the job, but it's a bit like being a footballer on you practice, but you never go and play in a league game or something. It's a bit like that, isn't it?
It's how you wrap your head around it as well.
When you joined, let's get this back on you anyway, mate.
Go on, mate.
Sorry, mate. No, I was just saying, let's. I'm doing too much speaking here, mate. Let's get this on you. So, when you joined up, then were you expecting to, like, what were your expectations of operations of war? Did you think you had a good chance to get stuck in, or what were you kind of what were your facilities?
Well, I was one week away from finishing Catterick, queuing up for the Scoff House when the Twin Towers were hit. And we were queuing up for a Scoff House. A guy came around the corner and just said, "Hey, the Twin Towers have been hit." And obviously we're a bunch of mongs and don't know where that is. So, a screw come around the corner and went, yeah, there's been a terrorist attack. He went, "You idiots are going to be going to war. God help us." And he just walked off around the corner. And like, up to that moment there, my military career was going to be much along the lines of what we just spoke about. When I went into the careers office, the guy was talking about adventure training and stuff, and he's probably telling the truth for once. And that's the thing. I was going to go bloody kayaking in Canada and shit, and then all of a sudden Twin Towers get hit, and now we're talking about gearing up. And I was expecting to get to battalion and it to be fairly shortly after that we would be deployable or deployed somewhere hot. And it did change my headspace quite a lot, because not that I was like, I suppose I was nervous to an extent, but you're just about to pass out of basic training. You're as green as the grass, and you're going to be going to a battalion with all these hairy ass veterans and going straight to war with them. It was quite a sort of scary thought, I guess, but it didn't turn out that way. I mean, I had to wait 8 years pretty much to go to Iraq, so that sucked.
So when you got to the battalion, then what was your first experience of it? Where were you based as well? What was the battalion? Where were you based, and what was it like?
It was based in Paderborn in Germany, so it was basically like the Wild West, and it was pre the Euro as well, so still Deutschmarks. Guys were going out just getting absolutely leathered sort of most nights of the week. I turned up to battalion, got taken straight to the barracks, and the barracks looked like been burgled. The corridor had piss in there. There was newspapers, beer cans, fag ash everywhere. The rooms looked like someone had just tipped upside down, and that was how it was. And I'd gone from a year or so of training to that, and I was like, shit, this is really different. But on average, I mean, I was rifle company straight away, so just when we were warrior at the time, so we spent a lot of time down the sheds, working on the vehicles, track bashing, going down the ranges. Germany's bitterly cold, so we're like going out freezing winters, sort of doing section attacks and things like that. I was in there for about 7 months in Germany, and in all honesty, I don't really remember much of it because I was drunk most of the time. It's pretty much how it was.
Sure, I've heard, I never went to Paderborn, but I've heard, was it like you come out the camp gates, so it was pretty much brothels and stuff there?
Yeah, so at the camp gates, there was about 3 brothels that were the ones that the boys used to go to. There was one called Club Rosa, which was the start of the month where you'd just been paid Millionaires Weekend, and they were Croatian, beautiful catwalk looking models. Then middle of the month, when you're a bit more skint, you go to the Beehive, which was like your Tesco's normal stuff, like your usual, and that they were, great looking girls, all sorts of types. And then the one just outside camp, these other 2 you had to drive to. The one just outside camp was called Club Tropical, and that was the end of the month when you're scraping a few Deutschmarks together and you're just absolutely clucking for anything. You go down there. But yeah, well, they were right by camp. It was a massive drinking culture back then. I know the army these days is very much professional, almost like professional sportsmen and women, eating all the right foods and doing the fizz. We did all the fitness and stuff, but we would go on tabs with guys smoking cigarettes and stuff, stinking of JD. It was nuts.
I like. I'm guessing then, like, because it does sound like the Wild West, mate. Um, had it all like from what you could tell, had it always been like that, or do you reckon is this something that boys will be boys and soldiers will be soldiers? And do you think maybe because of the lack of like a kinetic war like Iraq and Afghanistan, do you think that maybe that was kind of that inflamed the kind of the behavior of blokes into like, is it like almost like a self-destructive thing because you've got like, you're kind of like based out in Germany, you've got no wars to fight or anything like that, and then therefore it's like, well, if we haven't got any trouble given to us, we'll go find it.
I mean, any HQ in any battalion back in the day will probably tell you that the most terrifying thing to them in the world will be a bored soldier, because you just get up to all sorts of shit. That's what it was like in Germany. I mean, Green Jackets listening to this podcast will correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure a guy that was still half cut reversed through the wall of Italian HQ and took out an office at some point. Like, the whole battalion was, yeah. The whole battalion was called out on muster parade once. I was on guard once. As a new bloke, I spent a lot of time on guard. And the RSM came in screaming and shouting. And he dragged us all down to the guard, down to the naffy. And someone had pulled out a vending machine just enough to squeeze behind it and took a shit behind the vending machine on the floor. And it was like a perfect mister, like a walnut whip on the floor. And it's like you could smell the alcohol on it. And he went absolutely nuts. And he got the whole battalion on muster parade, got the whole battalion on parade and bollocked the entire battalion for someone shitting behind the vending machine. And no one ever came forward. They're still known as the Phantom Shitter to guys that were in battalion back in the day. Stuff like that all the time. Like if you went past the support company block, the guys from Snipers had air rifles and they would hang out the window and you had to hard target like you was in Stalingrad just to go and get some crisps from the naffy.
Brilliant. All right, mate. So, what was your first operational experience?
So for me was Northern Ireland. So I was based in Warminster at the time, and I heard rumours of this thing called a COP platoon or Close Observation Platoon, and everyone that was anyone was putting their name down for selection because the selection was in Qatar. So a lot of guys wanted to top up their tans. Loads of guys wanted to just go and have a crack. We were all bored in Warminster at the time. I asked someone and they said, yeah, don't bother going for it. It's going to be a load of bollocks. So I didn't. I ended up, when they come back from Qatar, they needed a backfill of a few guys. There weren't enough blokes on the selection. And I just got cherry picked into the platoon. So we deployed out there as a close observation platoon doing sort of covert surveillance and plainclothes work and all that sort of stuff, really. So I had a lot more interesting tour than I normally would have. But the course was killer hard, though.
So I've got to ask, if you go to Northern Ireland for, I imagine doing a lot of lying around in people's bushes and stuff, why was Qatar chosen as the place to do the course?
Great question. No one knows, actually, because Qatar is about as far removed from Northern Ireland terrain as you can get, weather-wise as well. I mean, it rains 300 days a year in Northern Ireland. But I wasn't actually on the selection. Apparently the selection was pretty good. They did like camp attacks, explosives and all that sort of shit. But again, it's like, that's got nothing to do with... I think the selection was purely just to put the guys through a ringer to see who had the most sand in them, excuse the pun. And then, come back and then... Because the COP platoons are... The way that you operate is in small four-man teams, and every man in that team has a job or a role, and there's no one else that can fill in if you take a casualty or anything like that. So everyone has to be on the ball. You're reliant on everyone to do their job. So I think they were just looking for putting everyone through the ringer and picking the best of the bunch before they went on the course.
So is the COP platoon separate to the Recce Platoon?
It's pretty much the battalion's Recce Platoon. So any battalion that's deploying to Northern Ireland, they're your normal battalion makeup where you have your different rifle companies and HQ company and support company with anti-tanks, snipers, all that. Mm-hmm. That almost gets dissolved and you end up all the guys just end up drifting to rifle companies. And the only separate thing to the rifle companies apart from HQ is COP platoon. And we are completely separate in our own separate lockdown compound. Everything that we do is secret. We couldn't tell anyone what we was up to, separate accommodation and all that sort of stuff. Is just because of the level of sort of intelligence that you're working up to. We just were pretty much separated from the battalion, but it created that them and us sort of thing, because we had long hair and using all these exotic weapons and all that sort of stuff, and guys just naturally get jealous.
On the subject of long hair, I just want to take a little bit of a detour here and talk about, was it the Green Jacket way?
Yeah.
So just fill us in on that, mate.
So the Green Jacket way is everything that's necessary and nothing that's not. And it was very much the way when I joined Battalion. We wouldn't ever do any drill whatsoever unless we had a parade coming up. And that was as rare as rocking all shit. No one ironed their kit unless they were going on a parade of sorts. Polishing your boots had to have mud off them. We didn't really polish them. If you saw someone down the guard room with 6 and 10s, it was a shocker. Like, they had had a fucking nightmare. Green Jackets are essentially absolutely the worst soldiers ever in camp. But when you get us out in the field, that's where they flourish. I think I said in my book, like, they needed the hardships of soldiering to bring out their better qualities. And the Green Jackets just seem to sort of have a lot of blokes like that. Right scruffy looking bastards, but you get them in the field and they're just amazing. And so we didn't have a lot of the other stuff of other battalions. I don't know, I can't comment on other infantry battalions at the time, like early 2000s, but we would just get the job done with as little bullshit as possible without messing the guys around if we don't need to. That was the Green Jacket way, really.
All right, mate. So going back to Northern Ireland then, can you remember your first time going out on a job?
Yeah, I think the first job we did. So basically, in cop platoons, you'll have in your 4-man call signs, you'll have a team commander, second in command, a tech guy, which was what I did, who gets all the photos and video, and the 4th guy is like a gunner / mule, he just carries all the stuff. And the first job we did, we had to go and get some photos of a house. They wanted photos of the house at a distance, approaches and exits, and all that sort of stuff. I had a massive lens on me in my bag. It was probably the size of a small bin, because we were taking photos from about 1 kilometre away on a hillside and in pitch black. I got out there and I'd knocked the lens at some point and jarred it, and the lens wasn't working. And so we had 3 guys in the ops room in Glazebrook. We had a helicopter team that took us out there. We had a QRF team sitting on standby, and I had 3 blokes with me, and they're all waiting for me to take these photos. And I'd fucked it because the lens was broken. So I had to basically just get another lens, put it on the camera, and pull this job out of the bag, take multiple images of everything. And when I got back to the Glazebrook mill, I had to print the photos off and stick them all together, and it was the size of a fucking door. But the controllers were like, okay, yeah, well done, you got the job done still. But that was like really hectic first job. First job you get out there and something goes wrong. But that's what I did. That's what I liked about cop platoon, is that every job was different. Every time you went out, you had to think on your feet, especially as a tech guy, because without photos or video, you've got nothing. And it was a lot of pressure, but I like that pressure. I sort of work better under pressure.
And what are these photos and videos kind of being used for?
They will be on jobs. If we're putting in a long-term surveillance job on someone, i.e. having a team watching them for a period of time, then you'll have it gives you a way to make up the ground so you can see where the house is, you can see the approaches and exits. We'll have little spot codes as well, so maybe going right on the road will take you to red 5, going left on his road will take you to blue 5. And then we'll also use the photos just to sort of we did one job, for example, where we was doing a surveillance job on a house, and we noticed something about it that was awry. And so we put the call up. They told us to turn the screen off and stop recording. We stopped recording, but we didn't turn the screen off because we're nosy and we knew they wouldn't find out anyway. And we watched 2 black-clad figures creep across the field to the front of the house, creep up the house, put something underneath the car, go round the back, do whatever they did, and then come out and creep across the field again. They're probably like SRR or something like that, or maybe the debt. But they would have, everything that they knew about that house when they approached it would have been off the back of what we'd told them. So they would have known that there was no passive infrared lights, there was no dogs, there was no, the neighbours were out, all that sort of stuff. Like all the pattern of life that we'd built up for that property would have assisted them or aided them on their close target recce. So it was stuff like that. It was just built up a picture of that person and their dwelling, and helped with future operations as well.
And on these jobs, how close could you be to, let's say, the people living in the house?
Sometimes you would go sort of pretty close, right in the back garden or around the back garden to some extent. But again, you don't want to compromise the job. So we try and do everything at distance if we can, and use the topography. So try and get on a bit of high ground to look down on the property and things. But we did do one job where we had to do a thing called a walk past of the property. So we had a remote camera that was dug into the ground somewhere, and we every now and then we just go and do a patrol past a camera site to make sure it hadn't been compromised. So we thought we'd just do a patrol of the camera site and then continue on our normal patrol through the village, and we'd just take a stroll past his house and have a look with a Mark 1 eyeball, a few of us. So we it's called a Green Army patrol in cop platoon, so you all like dress up like the rest of the guys out there, like in your normal uniform and stuff. If another unit had that area, we would have to wear their berets so that we look like them. And we did a walk past to this guy's house, and just as we're walking past his house, we've been watching him for about 6 months. And as we walked past his house, he came out his house. And I reckon you could put an A-lister celebrity in front of me and I wouldn't be as starstruck as I was at that moment, because I knew everything about this guy. I knew the fact that his son was smoking cigarettes around the back of the garage. I knew that his daughter was bringing blokes back to the house when he wasn't about. I've seen him fall out of his car 3 or 4 times, getting pissed on the back of coming back from the pub. I knew everything about this man, but he didn't know who I was at all. And it was just, it was mad. We walked past him. I couldn't look at him, of course, but yeah, massively starstruck.
Mental. That was mental.
Yeah.
What are some of the weird and random things that you saw doing the job?
We did to be honest with you, like, it's with the surveillance thing, a lot of people are living in rural locations, and their houses, because they don't have any neighbours, they don't normally have net curtains and stuff like that, because no one's looking in, are they? We are. And so we basically see everything that's going on in the house. So, people getting ready for bed and all that sort of stuff. But to be honest with you, we didn't see too much in the way of like sort of mad stuff like we really talk about, without sort of dropping anyone in any trouble. Mm-hmm. But we did have a couple of close calls. Like we nearly ballsed up a job. We climbed up a massive rocky feature to get some pictures, and then we didn't realise that the climb up was so difficult that the climb down would be suicidal. So we had to try and pace out a HLS on the top of it, and we thought we'd done it. We thought we'd nailed it. Only a Puma came in, and we were like, "Oh fucking hell, mate! It's not going to get this down." So we called the Puma over, and it just hovered just to the side of a rocky outcrop, and the loadie was just waving to us, going, "Come on, like just jump." And we know how high this thing is, and I've got like about sort of thousands of pounds of kit on my back, and it weighs a ton. And we had to jump for the Puma, but that pilot was a lady, and she nailed that. She was a rock star, man.
So what? Like just brought the is it tailgate on a Puma? I can't remember. Puma.
No, it's just the side door. So she just brought it down to a hover. Oh, wow. Yeah, it was about 3 or 4 foot gap. It wasn't like doing a massive jump, but because it was just nothing below us. And we couldn't use any white light or anything like that because it compromised the site. So we couldn't use white light to climb down either. So we had to just... And when the helicopter hovered, it was just a case of, okay, well, we're going to have to get on it because we're going to be stuck up here all night.
Amazing. Yeah. So how long was this deployment in Northern Ireland?
It's 18 months. And it went by... Yeah, it went by pretty quick. Just because, some of the jobs we were on went on for months. But it wasn't all terrorist stuff. It was, a lot of it was actually just smuggling and law breaking stuff, because it weren't like back in the day. There's still players doing their thing, and the one I told you about, the guys creeping across the field, that guy was a bomb maker, but mostly it was like crime stuff and all that sort of stuff, just assisting the PSNI, Police Service Northern Ireland, with their investigations and whatnot. We sort of worked for like it's called HQ Northern Ireland, or Jacuni, I think it was called back in the day, Joint Northern Ireland, whatever. And they would jobs would just plop out the phone, and then we would start whirring on it and get the job off the ground. But it could be for anyone, really.
In terms of like your expectations for the army and your enjoyment of doing the job or not enjoying it, like how was it pretty fulfilling? Was it something that cemented for you that you were in the right place doing the right thing?
Yeah. To be honest with you, the work doing the cop thing in Northern Ireland actually planted the seed in my head to maybe at some point have a crack at going SF. I had my fitness level and all that kind of stuff, and then whilst we were out there, we were sort of rubbing shoulders with these types, and I was just really impressed with them. We actually got invited to Hereford, and we helped out on the deck course as CivPop, and I got to see these folks and stuff. And for me, like, it was completely different. In cop platoons, as opposed to it's like in Battalion, you're generally spoken to and treated like a child in most cases. But COP was just a really, really grown-up environment. You know, the chief instructor wore a blue stable belt, and they taught you everything you needed to know and nothing that you didn't. There was no unnecessary fucking around. It was a hard enough job as it was, and they just gave you the tools to do your job. But it was in a really grown-up atmosphere, and all the jobs were like that too. You know, you roll into Glazebrook, the trust that was put in on the shoulders of young riflemen in their a lot of tech guys in their teams. The trust and sort of like, you know, dependent that they were put under was insane. And I really, really enjoyed that side of it. And I was really worried how I was going to sort of like get back into Battalion and the rifle companies again and all that sort of stuff. If I could have finished my career up in Cop Platoon in Northern Ireland, that would have been great. That was the pinnacle of my career, I'd say.
So when you did this 18 months with the battalion out there at the time, or because you had the specialist training, we that there for longer?
Oh no, the battalion's there at exactly the same time as us, so they would be you know, going out doing the usual stuff, whilst those poor guys were getting sort of bricks and stuff thrown at them on the Ardoyne shop fronts. We would be in a nice little covert observation post somewhere, or a nice little room in a disused building that's got a signal bounce back, and we were just sitting watching a little screen. So we had it like pretty cushy in COP, but then, you know, you're going out on patrol on the ground, a helicopter's dropping you off, and you're right deep in bandit country in South Armagh. You know that the QRF is going to take an age to get to you, and it's just started raining. That sort of stresses you out a bit, because you're like, fuck, are we even going to get picked up tonight? We're going to have to try and find a derelict to lay into. And I had a very, 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 very healthy respect for the guys of the IRA, the guys that we were up against out there, because they are, yeah, without doubt, one of the most experienced and technically proficient terrorist organisations on the planet. And I had a huge respect for them. And so when I was out on the ground, it just added that little bit more pressure, I guess, you know.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of pick on this 18-month thing a bit more, mate, because usually, obviously, people tend to do like 4 6-month tours and stuff. Was the battalion like a resident battalion or something at the time? Is that the reason?
Yeah. So we're based in Ballykinler, which is just sort of almost like the gateway to South Armagh. And yeah, we were based there for the 18 months. So yeah, the rifle companies were just doing their usual stuff, you know, going out on normal patrols in the areas, and they had a few little sort of bases here and there. And then we just did our thing. But yeah, the 18-month, I always thought 18 months was quite short for the amount of training and technical training that we did for Northern Ireland. I would have thought maybe 2 or 2 a bit years would have probably been a bit better use. But every battalion that is posted to Northern Ireland will have its own COP platoon. So we were South Armagh COP, and at the time when we were out there, I'm pretty sure it was the Regiment of Fusiliers were Belfast COP, and they did all around that area. And so every battalion that goes has their COP platoons, but I thought 18 months was quite short.
So when you're away for that amount of time, do people get like leave R&R? Like, are people? Because I've always thought one of the weirdest things I never went to Northern Ireland, but you know, when you're in Iraq, you're very aware that you're a long way from home, and I've always thought it must be a bit of a head fuck when you're in Northern Ireland and buildings look the same, and you're like,
yeah,
you know.
That's the thing. That's the weird thing, and it's something that's it's really hard to get used to. You know, you're going out on a covert patrol and you're in an area, and you know for a fact that there could be guys out there in the darkness that have seen the helicopter come in, that just by chance are in the area, and they could be waiting for you with shotguns. And at the same time, you're walking past road signs that you grew up next to down your own street, you know, British phone boxes. It looks exactly the same. But the thing that lends the handy thing is the fact that we all grew up in that environment. So, you know, we all know how to get over a barbed wire fence without getting disco leg, you know, all that sort of stuff. You know, we're used to this environment. We've grown up playing around in the streets and stuff. So it was quite handy from that perspective. It wasn't so alien. But because it wasn't so alien, it was also really weird, strange experience.
And were you getting to come back on regular leave at R&R?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, so some blokes just say I was called the camp tramp, so I was just stayed in camp all the time. I mean, the whole time I was in Germany, I just stayed in Germany. I never really had a girlfriend the whole time I was in the army. I didn't really do the family thing too much, so I just stay in camp. But a lot of blokes, I think every sort of couple of 3 months, a team would rotate onto leave, and you get like a long weekend or a week off here and there, and we would just try and fit it in around the jobs. guys would get off. But to be fair, most of the time when I got time off, I just stayed in Northern Ireland and just sort of bummed around camp.
I know. Yeah, when you were in Germany, because I know that the battalion that I went to, those lads were in Germany for a bit. Would have been a few years later than you were there, and a lot of them would come home on weekends and stuff. I'm kind of backtracking in our story a little bit here, but was that still was the culture when you joined to stay for people to stay in camp on weekends, or was it already becoming this thing where, like, everyone's getting knocked off at Friday lunchtime and then everyone's shooting off home, or was it still like weekends are with the lads and just mayhem?
It was about 50-50 split. So a lot of the blokes that had girlfriends, they would go down to the local car hire place if they didn't already have a BMW on like 500% APR, and they would hire the most powerful car they could get and then get on the Autobahn and just cane it back to the UK. So most blokes would do that, but the rest of us would stay in camp because it was just so good on the piss in Germany. Like, Germans are fantastic people. You have a great laugh with them. They're very good on the beer. They're pretty much like British people, to be fair. And a lot of the bars I used to drink in Paderborn were actually German local bars. They weren't really like the ones where all the squaddies went. So you could actually have a good night without too much aggro. But yeah, I mean, to be fair, most of the battalion would stay in camp, and it was normally the Hellraisers. So you'd hear them like prowling the corridors like 11, 12 o'clock at night looking for new blokes, and stuff like
that. Is there anything else you want to say about Northern Ireland, mate, before we get to Iraq?
No, not really. I mean, I suppose I don't know if you want to talk about it, but the whole sort of ambulance chasing lawyers thing with the Northern Ireland veterans.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I find it absolutely and utterly unbelievable that people who were convicted by a jury with evidence of terrorist acts and atrocities, who have been pardoned and released, are now still walking the streets free, whereas a guy or girl who has just carried out their job under terrible circumstances with ridiculous rules that they don't adhere to, the terrorists don't adhere to, and in a couple of instances, they got it wrong. Everyone does in a job. But we shouldn't be chasing after these people when they're in their late 50s and 60s and stuff like that. Not when people who have been convicted by a court are walking free. That's just my take on it.
No, I totally understand, mate. I can understand an argument. I wouldn't agree with it, but I could understand an argument for, okay, well, we're going to go after the people from both sides of the thing. But to give a pass to terrorists and then to go after your own troops, to me, it doesn't make logical sense. It certainly doesn't make moral sense.
No.
And I mean, even for the army, it's just like, all constantly, why can't we recruit anyone? It's like, honestly, you haven't figured this out yet, that maybe it's because you treat your own people worse than the terrorists. Like,
yeah, imagine being a firearms officer in the police now. Imagine trying to wrap your head around doing that job. You're working in London, you're a firearms officer, and if you pull the trigger in the line of duty, from the second you pull that trigger, you could very well end up in jail. If you didn't get absolutely every single facet of your job absolutely perfect, you'll get thrown in jail. Like, why on God's earth is anyone doing that job?
Mate, I've been told stories from firearms officers that even like in training, if you double tap, you'll be pulled up for it because they're like, well, the first round might have done the job. Why did you put the second one in? I'm like, I don't know, because I don't want to die. Like,
yeah, I want to make sure the threat's neutralized.
Yeah, it's just, I agree, mate. I don't understand why anyone would want to do it. I mean, I'm sure if we got anyone listening, it's because they want to protect people, I'm sure. But, I mean, I have my issues with the way policing is done in the UK, but I definitely respect the people who do that job and understand what a fucking no-win situation it is a lot of the time.
I'll be honest with you, I know a lot of police officers, and their job is got to be one of the most difficult jobs. Now, I mean, like back in the day when me and you were kids, if you messed around, a police officer would cuff you. They'll give you a hit round the back of the head, drag you to your front doorstep, and then bollock you in front of your parents. Whereas like coppers these days, not just with youngsters, but everyone has so many rights. They wear body cams as well. And everything they're doing is, like our rules of engagement in Iraq, they have rules of engagement, rules of this is the amount of force I can use in this situation. It must be such a difficult job navigating that on the daily. It's nuts.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really have to take my hat off, speaking to a mate about this the other day, he's a firefighter. We were talking about kind of the police, and we both say like one of the most difficult things they have is, they're the ones who have to quite often break the news to people about something bad's happened, someone's died in a crash, someone's, committed suicide or something. Quite often comes down to them, and I think, like I said, man, I'd take my hat off to anyone who has to do that, because it must be incredibly difficult.
Yeah, sure, man.
But enough, I've said enough good things about the police. So
that's it. Yeah, we're done now.
Yeah, that's it. That's all you're getting.
Yeah.
So moving on then, mate. When you got back then off your first tour, did you feel a change in yourself as a person? Because people always talk about changes as in the negative way, but there's obviously a lot of positive changes that come with an operational deployment. So how were things for you when you got back to the UK?
Yeah, they were good. I think it's everyone wants to go on an operational deployment of some sort, especially if you're in a sort of combat role, because you want to see if you're any good. You want to see if you've shit your pants or not. If you can do the job when the chips are down. I come back from Northern Ireland with a lot more confidence. I mean, my sort of team commander out there was he ended up disappearing into SF for some time. I got to soldier alongside him for 18 months. And in the platoon as well, that platoon in Northern Ireland was next level. I mean, I got to work alongside and soldier alongside some of the most amazing soldiers you could ever meet outside of SF, and I learned a lot in that short space of time. I mean, they were the cream of the crop. And so when I got back to the UK, the whole of COP platoon were asked, "Where do you want to go?" Because they were reforming the battalion, all the support elements, and most of us just drifted straight into Recce. And so I went straight to Recce after COP.
From what I can remember of seeing the rifles, obviously I did a couple of tours with them and saw them around on where I think they were was it Bulworth?
Bulford.
Bulford, that's it. Bulford, sorry, down the road for Tidworth. The Recce, but we talked about the Green Jacket way, but the Recce platoon is the most Green Jacket-y way of all Green Jackets, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone in Recce, in any infantry battalion probably, cut around in old SAS smocks held together with sniper tape, just like a bric-a-brac, chest rigs and all sorts of stuff. And because you are sort of out the way, I mean, we were in our own little Recce bungalow. You are sort of separate from everyone else. It's the same in the field as well, because you maintain that Recce gap. So you have a 5 to 10 kilometre gap between Recce snipers and the rest of the battalion of nothingness. So we're so far ahead. We are just scoffing bacon sarnies all day, every day, because the CO can't see us. Everyone just wears what they want to wear. And again, it's the green jacket thing. You get the job done, but with as little bullshit as possible. And Recce is the least amount. Recce and snipers, of course, they're both sort of single entities pretty much.
How often are you lot sitting around watching Sharp, and is Sean Bean like the patient in the regiment?
Sean Bean he's of course he's a boy anyway, but he's well liked and respected in the regiment. My closest contact with Sean Bean was one of my mates, Tom Keogh, who unfortunately died in Afghan in 2010. But Tom Keogh used to rub shoulders with quite a few folks in London when he was back on weekends and stuff, and he used to go on the piss with Sean Bean's daughter, Griff Reef Jones's daughter, Fern Cotton, and a few of the others. And he came back to battalion one weekend, and he put on his locker a photograph, and it was Sean Bean in an old shell suit, and he's got his arm around a little girl. I said, "Where the fucking hell did you get that?" And he went, we went back to Sean Bean's house after a night on the piss, and I went in his downstairs toilet and nicked it. So he had like a picture of Sean Bean in this fucking shell suit on his locker. Yeah. But yeah, it's obviously Sharps is. We were the Green Jackets, and going back to the Peninsular Wars, that's our bread and butter, and we are really proud of that. The fact that we was the first regiment to wear camouflage or green tunics and all that sort of stuff. A lot of regimental heritage, and so Sharp is the epitome of it. All the officers still wear pretty much the same uniform the Sharp wears, the buttons on it and stuff. It looks really cool. But yeah, I don't know if they're doing it in the rifles now.
So let's talk about that. So when did the Green Jackets become amalgamated into the rifles?
Do you know what? When I wrote the book, actually, I was going back and forth with one of the guys. I'm pretty sure it was just before we went on Obtelic 10. They'd done the amalgamation, and we went out there, and it was amalgamated from the Devon and Dorsets, the Light Infantry, the Royal Green Jackets, and the Royal Gloucestershire, Berkshire, and Wiltshire Regiment. So loads of regimental history. I mean, there's every regiment there is steeped in history, and they were all being amalgamated into one big unit. A bit like when all the Power Rangers fucking combine at the end, and formed the Rifles, five battalions. And it was just bringing the best of all the regiments to one unit. But like every unit, I guess, was worried about losing their regimental identity in the merge. And so there was a big influx of guys leaving, or exodus of veterans sort of leaving, because they felt like they was deserting the Green Jacket ship, like the sinking ship sort of thing. But it didn't turn out like that. I mean, the Rifles is a fantastic regiment. All the regiments brought the best of their regiments to it. And I mean, it's a great regiment now.
Yeah, it was the 1st of February 2007, so probably a month or two before. Yeah, Telek 10.
That's right, yeah. Makes about sense.
So let's talk about Telek 10 then, mate. Iraq. When did you get to know that you were going out there, and what were you expecting from the tour?
Well, we got back from Northern Ireland. I'm not sure if we knew about Iraq when we got back from Northern Ireland, because we got straight back and we went straight into scimitar. So we were working on those. I was a gunner in a scimitar for a bit. And then at some point we just dropped the wagons and started training light stuff. So Recce, our bread and butter was strike ops. That was what we were going to be doing in Iraq, was strike ops. So every night going out, targets, just going after people. So that was pretty much what we did all the time. And our platoon commander was called Robert Bassett, Bertie Bassett. And he was a bit of a go-getter in battalion. Like, everyone liked him, good bloke. And he was very much like, he would just train us all the time. Like, blokes would be going home for the weekend and we would be going out on Salisbury Plain and exercising. And a lot of blokes were shimphing about it, but I knew what he was doing. He was getting us up to a decent, good standard, and he really did. And so, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a hell of a time before we went to Iraq. We knew, but I can't remember exactly when we were told of it. But we had a good few months of just training pretty much around the clock before we went.
So your platoon commander in Recce then, would he have been a captain? So he's got a bit of experience under his belt, probably already done an operational tour.
Yeah, well, he's I think he'd been to Northern Ireland. I know that much, but he was a rifle company platoon commander. When I was in B company, I'm pretty sure he was 7th platoon commander, and he was just one of those good ones. One of those good officers that got on with the blokes. Really affable. He's quite a young bloke as well. You could have a good bit of banter with him, like actually have a good relationship with your boss, rather than sort of bracing up and all that sort of stuff. He's just one of the boys. But yeah, I think he was picked for Recce because he was a good go-getter, good astute officer, but also, he was a bit of a maverick. And I think you need someone like that in charge of a sort of Recce platoon kind of thing,
Really? Yeah, 100%, mate. So, what were you expecting in terms of, you know what you were doing jobs-wise, but let's just say level of violence, because obviously Iraq, a bit like Afghan, kind of fluctuates. When you were going in, what were you expecting on the violence scale?
I mean, we were expecting it to be bad, to be honest with you. We were all planning it down to our families and all that sort of stuff, but we were taking over from one RGJ, and they were in the palace at the Basra Palace at the time. And at the time, that was when Help for Heroes was like almost its pinnacle, or it was around about that time. And the Sun newspaper and all the red tops were just anything to do with the war in Iraq and Afghanistan and whatnot. And every single day was like the injured and dead from Iraq, from the guys that we were taking over. So we were under no impression, or no sort of falsehood that it was going to be rough when we got out there. And as Recce Platoon, I mean, we were expecting to do strike ops and stuff like that. So we wouldn't be going out and doing the usual patrols and getting in the firefights like the rifle companies, but we would be going out and doing strikes as a single entity, or sometimes sandbagging for the regiment blokes. But every single door you go through.
What do you mean by that, mate?
Oh, the regiment blokes, yeah. So there was a small enclave of SAS guys that were based out of Basra Palace. They had a call sign name, I can't remember what it was. And we would sometimes go out on jobs for them and sandbag for them. So if we were doing a strike op, there'd be one or two blokes, Recce blokes from the Green Jackets in front of them, go through the door, and then an SAS geezer would be over his shoulder. So if anyone was firing through the door, the guys that cost less money to train would sandbag it, and we would catch the rounds, and then the SAS geezer would step over us and go in the door. So yeah, so it was a bit hectic. If you were sandbagging, you're like, why have they got me sandbagging tonight? Is it going to be bad? I don't know. You're shitting
So
yourself.
basically like a human ballistic shield.
It's the bean counters of the British Army have gone, SAS guys cost millions of pounds to train. This guy, we're in the thousands, so he goes through the door first.
Yeah, fair enough, mate.
Simple maths, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you can't argue with the logic of it, but
Yeah.
you know, still.
But again, but seeing these
yeah.
guys out there, they were rock stars, man. You know, like
Yeah.
you know, it's like anything. You know, if you're into your football, and you know Cristiano Ronaldo that like invites you down the park for a kick around, you're gonna have the fucking best day ever. And like we're professional soldiers, we look up to these SF guys, these special forces guys, and getting to work alongside them and do these strike ops and watch them move and everything like that. You know, like they're like superstars to us. They're like celebrities. You know, especially if you're a proper professional soldier, and getting to work alongside those guys and see the kit that they had, the way they moved, the professionalism, how cool and calm and collected they were. Yeah, it was impressive, man. I mean, always.
What was the relationship like with you on a kind of personal level?
What with them?
Sorry, I think we got.
Oh, yeah, cut off.
Yeah, so I will tell people this in the. Yeah, I will tell people this in the intro, but we're both recording from rural locations, so
yeah.
Yeah, every now and again this is dropping out. But yeah, neither of us like people, so we're both.
Yeah, absolutely, man, yeah.
Yeah, so I was just saying, mate, what was it like working with them on a professional level? Because like you said, they are rock stars. How did they kind of treat you?
That's the thing, man. Like, you know, let's be honest, they've got every right to just, when we turn up to their compounds, to sit there like Johnny Big Bollocks, you know, and fucking treat us like crow bags. But they don't. They were just super chill, you know, just let us sort of lounge around in their lounge. They had a dog and everything in their compound, and yeah, we just go down, and they would just call us a cucumber. Even on the jobs, they would be really patient with us, you know, and like give some of the guys tips and pointers and stuff like that. Like exactly what you'd expect from British Army blokes, you know, like I say, they had every right to just be like them and us, but it wasn't like that at all. Like they were good geezers, man.
So, what was your departure like for Iraq? Leaving the family, leaving the country. What did you expect to come back? Are you one of those people who's always like, I'll be all right, or are you one of the pessimists who thought if anyone's going to get it, it's going to be me?
Well, yeah, I mean, so it's really funny actually. Before we went out to Iraq, Recce Platoon, a few of us went to Salisbury, and we all got Recce recon tattoos on our legs or on our body, and we chose the location of that tattoo on ourselves. I chose it to be on my right leg because I was like, if I get caught in a bomb blast and I lose a limb, right, I'll probably be better off losing my right leg than my left. And chances are, if I get a new tattoo, that's the part of my body that I will fucking lose because sod's law. So I got mine on my right leg on the off chance that if I did get blown up, that's probably the one that would go. But yeah, I mean, when we came back from Iraq, or coming back, the whole platoon was unscathed, physically unscathed. None of us got shot. None of us got blown up. Anything like that. Recce Platoon, we were sort of not kept out of harm's way, but although our jobs were such intelligence-led that we were going into situations where we pretty much knew what was going to happen anyway. The rifle companies that were in Basra Palace with us, totally different kettle of fish. Those guys were getting gunfights all the time, going out on the streets and stuff like that. You know, they had it was almost like a tale of two tours. You know, they had their tour, we had ours. I mean, we did a covert observation post in the Basra city. You know, all that sort of stuff. Like ours was more sneaking around at night and stuff like that rather than the tour that they had.
So let's talk about when you first got to the country then. What were your first impressions of Iraq?
Do you know what, man? I'm a bit of an empath. Like I feel people's feelings and stuff. I you know, and I was just, moreover, I was just devastated for the Iraqi people, if I'm being honest. You know, we would go out on patrol and you'd see that they would have like electricity for a couple of 3 hours a day on a good day. You know, the place was a shithole. I don't know what it was like beforehand, but the Iraq we went to was a dive. And I did just feel quite bad for the people, especially those that lived around Basra Palace, because we were getting mortared around the clock, all day, every day. And the ones that dropped short landed on them. And so you're constantly hearing about casualties from the locals and stuff like that. But my impressions was just, this is going to be a really hard tour because the heat was just insane. I mean, I never really got on with heat too much, but, you know, the late 40s in the degrees in a metal box with no aircon, with body armor and helmet on, it's just rats.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just talking to this about someone the other day, mate. Like, just generally thinking that if you took a 40-something-year-old man and put him in the back of one of those vehicles with all the kit on, I do think he would die.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We had a long patrol once. A vehicle upturned and we had to hold a junction. We were out for about 10 or 12 hours, and it was literally every half hour someone would just plop to the floor, and we'd just have to Kazi-vac them straight back to Basel Palace. Just heat, exhaustion. And it wasn't through bad admin. It was just so hot. You know, you're just constantly sweating. You can't replace the fluids fast enough. I'll take my hat off to the guys that went Afghan, because I never did Afghan, but I know that the patrols were so long in Afghan. The weight, the kit that he was carrying was so long. The terrain was so difficult. And the heat was around about the same, right?
Afghan was a bit cooler.
Right.
I mean, we're talking about marginal differences here, 40s rather than 50s. But
Yeah.
I don't know, like, you definitely carried more kit in Afghan, but in Iraq, being in the back of those vehicles for extended periods of time with the mortar hatches shut down and stuff, that was a lick in itself. I mean, there's no good one, really. I mean, I'm just, you mentioned the Peninsular War earlier. Why we can't have wars in France anymore, I don't know.
Might be wonderful.
Lovely temperature, lovely place, pop home on a weekend,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's you're talking about really, really hot or really, really hot, it's,
Yeah.
no, yeah. But you mentioned that instance with the vehicle, mate. That was one of the really moving parts of your book. Can you tell us a bit more about what happened that night?
Well, so it was a thing called an Ophausen, which was a resupply of the palace. Because the palace was in the centre of the city pretty much, it was hemmed in on three sides by the city itself, and the fourth by the Shatt al Arab waterway. And in order to get large convoys of supplies into the palace, we had to send as many blokes out into the city as we could to hold all the vulnerable points like junctions, main direction turns, and just sit and hold those positions until the convoy passed through us and then collapsed back to the palace. So we were out on one of those, and Recce, our job that night was to get on a low parapet wall overlooking a road where we thought an attack might take place, and we were going to jump the people jumping. That was the job. So we were just getting onto a building top, and we heard a call to go back to a junction not far from the palace. We didn't know why, and we thought, Jesus, it's started already. It's only about 5 hours in. Because on these Ophausen's, these resupply convoys, we would never lose a guy or girl every single bloody time we had to do a Hausen. So we thought they'd been hit already. So we got back to this junction. Me and Lewis jumped out the back of the wagon and held one of the corners. And as the vehicle that dropped us off moved away, it was almost like in a film. It just showed us this scene of just, it's heartbreaking, is the only way I can describe it. What had happened was a warrior, was trying to pass over a small bridge. And the bridge was, it looked to me, it looked wide enough for the warrior, but I'm assuming that between the commander and the driver and the dusty conditions and everything else, there was a bit of miscommunication and it fell off the bridge. So the scene that we were presented with was an upturned warrior armor personnel carrier. There were in an irrigation ditch, and there were men on the bank covered in mud and soaking wet, which were obviously the guys, the dismounts in the back, and they were taking it in turns to get into the back of the wagon and then coming out again. Some of them were openly weeping. You could see the stress and the anguish in their faces, and we didn't know, but the driver, Lee Cartwright, is it Lee Cartwright, was in the driver's hatch, and because of basically the way his seat was stuck in a position, and also the turret cage was around, I think the traversed a certain way, they couldn't get him out. He drowned upside down in his hatch. And the crying and everything like that was his mates desperately trying to get this poor guy out. And we held that scene for a good couple of 3 hours, and it was just the human tragedy of it, because of the selflessness of the death as well. It wasn't through enemy fire, it wasn't through an attack or anything like that. It was a simple and momentary lapse of concentration. I know those things happen on operations, but it's just heartbreaking to see that. And that his parents are going to find out and everything like that. And again, me being an empath, it just really upset me, that scene. It was just so sad.
Yeah, Lance Corporal James Cartwright was the...
James Cartwright, that's it, yeah.
From Royal Tank Regiment.
Yeah, he's only a youngster, man.
Yeah. Yeah, well, unfortunately, mate, most of them are, aren't they? It's what again?
Yeah.
Now if you put a few years between at the time you think you're men. I mean, you are men, but then like you look back, and you're like, fuck me, it's no age, is it?
No, Matt, it's just crazy.
So yeah, so I want to talk a bit more about what life at Basra Palace was like for you, mate. Because right there you've just described one end of operations, the worst end of things. You did have some pretty fucking funny stories in the book too, which we'll get to in a minute. But just tell us about like what is daily life like? Because essentially you're under siege at Basra Palace, right?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know for sure, I can't be sure, some of your listeners might know, but I'm pretty sure that Optelic 10, those that were in Basra Palace, it's been classed as like a siege, like we were basically under siege. And from what I understand, the reason is because all the militias in the city knew that we were going to pull out at some point, and so they were trying to curry favour and become the top boys, and you'd do that by killing loads of the troops. So we were the rifle companies were going out on like sort of patrols and just getting shot up and shooting people up, and all that kind of stuff. And it was just kinetic as hell, like getting mortared around the clock. Recce Platoon, our day-to-day was, we would normally be sleeping off a strike op from the night before, and then we'd get up, get all our kits sorted out, go over to HQ, get orders for another one that night, start doing rehearsals, get some scoff in us, and then go out and do it again. And it was just a constant rotation of that. The rifle company guys were manning all the towers, stag positions and stuff. They were going out on framework patrols, all sorts of stuff. But it was the mortaring that made Basra Palace the siege, was because you just couldn't get anything in the palace without someone having a crack at it, whether it be on vehicle or a helicopter. They were just, it was insane. And because of that, the food quality and quantity in the palace was shit the whole time we were there. I mean, we was in the palace for about 3.5 months. I think we had something like just shy of 1,800 mortars land in the palace in that time. The food ration was just tiny, because the more food they brought in, the more guys died. So they just brought in less.
Yeah, and we should note as well that at this time, pretty much, well, by the end, it was the only remaining British kind of footprint in the entire city. So, like I said, it kind of just allows everyone in the city then to just like tee off on one single spot. All right, mate. So I'm gonna have to make you talk about this one on air. Talk us about talk us about your romantic Portaloo story.
Right, so obviously when you're on operations, if you don't have a wank, you'll probably end up killing one of your teammates at some point. And you have to do it. You have to do it. You can't go out with a full sack. So even in a war zone, guys have got to do what guys have got to do. And because you're so living on top of each other in the buildings, and you have to be, because you have to be in the most hard cover part of the building, because otherwise there are mortars. But if you wanted to crank one out, the only place where you could get any privacy was the Portaloos. Now, these Portaloos were monstrous. They were. Imagine a Portaloo that's been at Glastonbury since they started the festival, right? It's never been emptied, and it still wouldn't be as bad. Like, you've got guys eating shit food, crapping in these Portaloos, and the Portaloos, at some point, the guy that used to take the shit out of them was killed in a mortar attack. So they stopped getting emptied. And you get to the point where, you know that scene in Jurassic Park when they find that massive great pile of dinosaur poo? It was like that. You had to wrap your hand in tissue, push the shit off the top so you could actually just sit down and have clearance. And it is in these boxes of death that you had to have a wank. And so I went down one day, and I pulled out my pull magazine for my plate cover in my body armour, and was doing the biz. And you have to be quick, because again, we talked about the heat earlier, 50-degree heat. A Portaloo, you can crank that up probably another 10 degrees. Plus the ammonia that's coming off the piss and shit that's below you. It's a death trap. Oh, and the fact that it's made of plastic and won't stop a fly at terminal velocity, let alone a fucking mortar round. So you got to be quick. So anyway, I was doing the biz, and the mortar alarm went off, and I had a moment of, do I stay in here and just grizz it out, or do I get on the floor, which is the best thing to do? And so I just dived straight through the door and landed on the floor with my pants still around my ankles and my semi-cocked penis in my hand and just curled up in a ball and tried not to die whilst my penis became limp in my hand. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, wanking in a war zone is about as dangerous as going on patrol sometimes.
Oh, mate. I can feel that story, mate. Like,
oh, mate. You would come out the Portaloo. You'd know if the guy's been down the Portaloo to do the biz because he'd come back and look like he's just been on a sweat run. You know, and you know he hasn't been to BHQ. He's been having because you can see he's soaking wet. But yeah, you know it's like on tour. You know, someone gave you a catalogue with bikini models in it, no nudity at all. That'd do it. That would do it. That you need the bare minimum to do the job.
Yeah, man. I mean, it does make you want, like, because like I said, everyone's doing it. Like the thought of being that person who you never live it down, would you? If you caught a bit of shrapnel or something if you're doing that, mate. Like,
yeah, I think I put in the book. I was like, I had these pictures when I was sitting on the toilet trying to decide. I was thinking, but if I die, it's just gonna. I had pictures of like my platoon stood around like a bloody Portaloo with just a shredded paw mag on the floor, and like they know what they've been up to, you know, sort of thing.
Still, the thing is though, like none of that get mentioned. That it'd be, he was a future RSM in the making, died as was killed in a roadside bomb, maybe something like that. Yeah, fucking hell, not fucking wanking on a giant pile of shit.
I've got to say, just because obviously it's your podcast, but the Royal Welsh, we had a few of those boys in Basel Palace with us, and I think they're called Rorke's Drift Company.
Yeah, B Company.
Yeah, them boys did the biz. Like every time we went out on a strike up, we were Bulldog and they had the Warriors, and we'd have a Warrior front and back, and you know however many we needed for the job. And if you knew that the Warriors were at the front of the convoy, you could just relax, because when the shit hit the fan, they dealt with it, and they dealt with it fast and aggressively, and we've moved on. And I appreciated the fact that they were out there with us, and they were really good for us on our jobs and stuff. I just wanted to say that for your listeners.
All right, yeah, we can wrap up the podcast there, mate.
That's it, mate.
Yeah. So okay, mate. Like, there was another story you kind of touched on earlier, and also shout out B Company. There was another story earlier you touched on about putting in an OP on one of these like heavily kind of IED'd places. Talk us through that, Bob, mate, because it was not something, that kind of thing did not happen. I mean, it should have fucking happened a lot, but it didn't happen a lot. So to talk us through that.
Yes, it's again, it's not the sort of stance that the British Army would normally take, such an aggressive sort of thing. It was almost along the lines of like the what the SAS got in trouble for in Northern Ireland, with the Lockall bombing and stuff, and they shot their guys up. We were looking to do the same thing, but essentially we lost one of our guys, a real good guy who was universally liked in Battalion, a guy called John Rigby, and he was killed by a roadside bomb on a prominent junction that was constantly getting bombs on it. Everyone was getting fed up with it, and a job was being banded around and saying, let's put in an OP on that junction, put some patrols through, and we'll just brass up anyone who tries to do anything silly. And it was passed around by a few guys, and the regiment, the guys, the SAS guys, they were asked about it, and they were like, yeah, seems doable. We'll have a crack if you want. So my platoon commanders just cherry-picked a few blokes, and mainly cop platoon blokes, because our OP game is just so strong. And then we went out and inserted, and basically it was a big, tall derelict. It was still in concrete sort of form, so just holes for windows, sort of solid concrete building, about 5 or 6 stories high maybe. And we were going to occupy the top floor of that, which gave perfect view down to the junction. So we had a few guys from Recce, we had a couple from anti-tanks, a couple from snipers. We inserted in the building under cover of darkness, and we occupied the top floor for about 2.5 days. But we had to go in light order, because obviously the locals aren't stupid. We couldn't go in with full OP kit because they would clock it. We couldn't go with more vehicles either, so we had to all squeeze in the back of the wagons, climb out, a few of us inserted into the building, and everyone just collapsed down and everyone moved back. I think the QRF was about 15-20 minutes away, so we had to fight it out for that long if the shit hit the fan. So most of us I just didn't bother taking food at all. I just took water and ammo. That was the most important things, really. And within about 2 days, all of us had run out of water. We just couldn't carry enough. The top floor was stifling. The heat was just... That's the most heat I felt in Iraq, was in that OP. And for 2 days, we watched framework patrols going out through that junction and then coming back, and nothing happened. So we were going to collapse that night. But here's the weird thing that happened with that, was when you plan an op, you look at everything from, likely enemy locations, enemy strengths, everything, even the weather. But what we didn't look at was the national sporting calendar, right? And when we got in the OP, we could hear all the TVs around in the buildings. They were listening to some sort of sporting game. We didn't know what it was. Couldn't tell because of the language barrier. And then all of a sudden, the whole city just erupted in cheers. And then the next was gunfire. And there were people driving around, firing their guns in the air. When the final whistle went, and Iraq had won the Arab Nations Cup, the Basra went off big time. I mean, every single person that had a gun was out in the city, driving around, walking around, firing them in the air, guys with balaclavas, everything like that. And the whole time we're in this OP, 20 minutes away from the QRF, and the sniper lads are calling out opportunity targets, and our boss is like, fucking no way. Like, if we tell them we're in here now, we're fucked. Like, they will not get here on time, So yeah, we just hunkered down whilst the whole of Basra, it seemed, celebrated this match, and the whole time just hoping beyond hope that no one came into the building that we were in to hang their flags from the top. Because if they did, it would have become the Alamo. That was about as stressful as the OP got during that period. I mean, I think everyone had a flap at some point. But yeah, it was the only, as far as I'm aware, I think it was the only non-SF OP in Basra during Optelic. But yeah, people probably say, but might tell me I'm wrong there, but it was pretty unheard of to do that sort of thing. But yeah,
I certainly had to do it, mate. And do you think that things like that, I mean, obviously that they are high risk, but kind of high reward too, right? Do you think stuff like that should have been done more? And is that this kind of stuff that you lads were asking to be doing?
I think, to be honest, it's you need to be a wolf to catch a wolf, and it's like you say, when you got operations anywhere you go, the rules of engagement will always be the thing that the guys will tick about the most, because you're going up against people with no rules of engagement. And that's the most sort of the difficult side of it. Do I think that we could have gone on more kinetic ops and stuff like that and taken the fight to them a lot more? Yeah, I guess so. But then in order to do that, we probably would have lost blokes in the same time. So the higher ups, I think, were trying to avoid these massive, great shows of force. I think the rifle companies had a couple where they basically just went out, hunkered down, and just waited for them to come up on them, and then they just had a scrap. But I don't think we did anything massively kinetic, just purely because it would have been a fucking nightmare. I mean, we're going up against the city, pretty much.
Yeah, I was told on Telic 10 from a lad in the incel that there was a plan to basically for us and your lot and, all the RTR lot and everything to just go into the sheer flats and just do a Fallujah block by block. But they do an estimate on it of how many blokes they lose. And but it's one of those, because it's all right, well, you might lose a lot of blokes in a week, but does that save a lot of blokes? And this, I'm guessing here, but my thinking is because they'd already decided to abandon the city, that it was probably, what's the point? If we were staying on for a few more years, maybe it would be worth it. I was good because I thought it sounds fucking outy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a weird one, because obviously we were the ones that pulled out of Basra Palace. So the whole front cover, the lions of Basra and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. There's loads of conjecture flying around about why we left and the situation around it, us leaving. But in all honesty, I don't know if there was anything to win. We were never going to get full control of the city. The Iraqi police was so corrupt that if we saw Iraqi policemen out in the streets, we had to assume that they were with the militias. Sometimes they would hold people back so that the militias could shoot us up or bomb us and stuff like that. Recce Platoon, we helped train the Iraqi army that came in and took over Basra Palace. We were flying back in on the daily to retrain them. And I was under the impression they would be dead within a week. These guys were like fucking Dad's army. And it was just shocking, really. But yeah, the whole time we was in the palace, you said about that attack, there was a planned attack on the palace as well. They were going to put an massive explosive vehicle up against the side of the Basra Palace wall, explode it, make a hole, and then they were just going to flood the palace with hundreds and hundreds of fires. We were told about that at one point, and we had to all get prepared for it. So our building, especially because we were right by the perimeter wall, we had ammo boxes and grenades in the downstairs, going up the stairs, all the way up the stairwells to the top, to the roof. And it was just a case of, like, our actions on was, if they do that attack whilst we're here in the palace, we just have to fucking fight to the last man, get to the roof, and maybe one or two might get picked off by a helicopter. I don't know. It was scary as hell, man. Every time you had a bomb or a blast, you're like, fuck, yeah. Yeah, Ali, yeah.
Yeah.
But unfortunately...
Could have had a movie, mate.
We lost a bloke because of that, because of friendly fire incident, because everyone was cutting around with loaded weapons for this attack. A guy that was asleep in his bed, resting after a patrol. A young lad came in, picked up a sniper rifle that's leaning up against the wall, didn't see the magazine on it because they sit flush, cocked it, pointed at him, pulled the trigger, and fucking blew him away. Just I don't know why the fuck they coined the term friendly fire, but it was friendly fire, of course. But it's just heartbreaking, really. But that shooting was purely down to the fact that we was at a heightened state of readiness for that attack.
What happened to the lad who pulled the trigger?
I think he got done for manslaughter. I won't say his name on the podcast, but
no.
He actually spent. I actually done some soldiering with him before I went to Recce Platoon, and I found him to be an alright bloke. He was a nice lad. It was just, you know, the rule in the army: you never point a weapon in jest. Just a young lad and made a stupid mistake, and that's it. It was no malice or anything like that. It was just fucking stupid.
Yeah. I mean, it's like going through these World War I and World War II stories. I was shocked about how many times things like that happen. You know, and you realise that these things that we get taught in the 2000s, you know, they're based on this stuff happening for hundreds of years. You know, like the things I never point a weapon at someone in jest. That's not just someone thinking, "Oh, this would be a good idea." It's like, it's because it's happened so many fucking times.
Yeah,
like it will, by the balance of probability. If you got 10,000 soldiers and you don't drill that into their heads, it's going to happen. And even when you do drill it in, it will still happen to someone, because someone, like you said, will make a stupid mistake. And
yeah. I mean, it's a universal rule, isn't it?
That would be it. Yeah. Let's talk about you touched on rules of engagement. What did you think of your rules of engagement in Iraq?
I mean, it's a really weird thing with rules of engagement, because, like, you have to fire if you're fired upon and all that sort of stuff. Like, I think the Americans have got slightly looser rules of engagement. You might know a bit more about this than me, but they seem to be a lot more shoot first, ask questions later. Is that right?
Well, kind of, because one of the things I found really weird about Telic 10 was that if we went out on patrol with American Apaches, we could get, say, like, maybe it'd be like weaker than fire. Like, let's say there's a pickup full of blokes armed to the teeth, obviously on their way to engage us. We can't do anything about it that the American Apache could. And I always found that weird. I'm like, and we're not part of the same... We're the same coalition, but he's got a different flag on his arm, so he can shoot, but our blokes wouldn't be able to. I found it very strange, really, to say the least.
Yeah. I'll second that. I mean, we did one patrol with some guys. There was in Basra Palace as well. There was a little compound that was like an American compound, and they had some. I don't know what the CIA. They have like a militant wing of people, ex-Delta guys or whatever. And we did a patrol with them. Because the American compound got hit with a mortar attack, and they hit their fuel dump. I've got a video of me on the roof of Basra Palace pointing at it, like going, "Fucking Americans are on fire." And they wanted to identify that mortar base plate. They wanted to find out where they were firing from. So we took them out because we were like local knowledge, and the guys came with us, and we were out on patrol. And yeah, like they were a lot more aggressive than we were. In terms of, like, like a car came around the corner with his lights on and they were just going to shoot the driver because he was lighting us up for an attack, and we were along the lines of, he's probably just going home after a day at work. Yeah. It's that sort of style. It's like, at the end of the day, we've got to protect ourselves regardless. Whereas the British Army, we'd err on the side of caution a bit more, I think that's the difference.
Yeah,
really.
I think I definitely see where our rules of engagement are coming from, because if you're trying to win a local population, we don't do it by shooting a bloke on his way home.
You have to do it exactly that.
Yeah, so maybe you have to take a bit more risk. You did actually witness one of the rare uses of fast air. Didn't you? So talk us through that.
Yeah, well, you don't really see it in built-up areas, of course, because there's so much collateral, so you have to be careful. But we were on a job where we were sitting on top of it's called the American Gate. There was these huge ornate stone archways that took you into Basel Palace. I think it was like 2 or 3 of them. And one of them was called the American Gate. And we were on top of that on an OP position. And we were looking out for, whenever they were bringing in helicopters into the palace, they would always get pot shots and shots taken at them. So we were looking out to see if we could identify any mortar base plates or any firing points whilst we were up there. And we had come on the radio, Jinju was my commander, said that a mortar base plate team being identified setting up on the outskirts of the city. Could we just check the grid on the map and all that sort of stuff? So Jinj did what he did, spoke into the radio, and then he just sort of looked at me and went, they're fucking calling in fast air glaze. They're going to drop a big bomb. And it was just like fireworks night. You know, like we were so fucking excited. And we were just, we worked out roughly the angle at which the thing was going to go. I don't know how big the bomb was, but that fucking thing went. I mean, it was massive. And the way the prevailing wind was blowing, it blew the whole cloud towards us on this elevated position. And it was just really weird, like being surrounded by the bomb that you dropped, you know, the smoke of it and probably vaporized people. But I don't know how many people were in that mortar team, but I think I'm probably flying mints now. Our job shagging 32 virgins as a fucking bit of Tesco's mints.
So one more story I wanted to pull out on the book, mate, was because this bit of an unusual experience as well, was you going to visit a mate at the hospital in at the air station. Tell us something.
That was so on the we was on the same job on the American Gate looking out for helicopters and stuff like that, and the guys went out on Op Pandora from the Cobb, and it was to go after a guy who had surface-to-air missiles, or supposedly. And unfortunately, the word got out that they were coming out, and they were set up for an attack, and it went off big time. One of my best mate, Frenchie, was shot, and when I got back off that job off the gate, my boss collared me and said, "Frenchie's been shot. He's in the Cobb. He's in a bit of a bad way. If you can get out there, go." So I went and found a guy called Chad Wright, who was like a pillar of the regiment, Sergeant Major. He was one of my controllers in COP in Northern Ireland. And Chad wangled me through the RSM, a helicopter, to the Cobb. So I sprinted to the helicopter pad with just my belt kit on, or chest rig, got on the mail helicopter, got dropped off at the Cobb. I only stopped in there for 10 seconds when we passed through on the way to the palace. I'd never been there before. I just waited around for this bus to turn up. Apparently there was a bus there. I put my hand out, a bus turned up, fucking door opened up, aircon, I just got on it. It took me to the hospital there, and he'd just come out of surgery, and he was laying on a gurney, and it's really weird. It's just in the middle of a huge tent, on a gurney in the middle with just a light above him. It's like a scene from a film. And the nurse just sort of like gave me a look as though like he's not going to make it back. Like, you know, you might well say goodbye. And I was in the middle of saying goodbye to him, and the mortar alarm went off. No one's in the room with us, and there's no hard cover. You're in a tent. So I was like, well, fuck. So I thought, well, if I can't find any hard cover, Frenchie's going to die anyway. So I put my helmet over his face, my body armor over his body, and I got under the fucking bed. I'd used him as hard cover because I was like, that's the least he can do, you know. And then after the attack finished, I put my body armor and helmet on before anyone came back in and saw me. And the nurse said, we're going to try and get him out between the sacks. And I just sort of like turned back and looked at him for what I thought was going to be the last time, and left the tent just completely jaded. But it turned out he survived the flight, and he's does loads now. He represents Team GB in para hockey, sledge hockey. He's climbed Kilimanjaro. He's won medals in the Invictus Games and Warrior Games. Done loads of stuff, man. So yeah, can't keep a good man down.
Oh.
Yeah.
So on pulling out of the city then, mate, what were your feelings, with, because those of us who were Cobb, obviously we were going into the city, but we weren't having to live through Basra Palace like you lads were, and everyone else who was at Basra Palace. So what was the feelings like from leaving there and pulling back, and have they changed over time?
A lot of people have mixed feelings about Iraq, about the reasons we went in, what we achieved whilst we were there, the blokes that we lost, all that sort of stuff. But I mean, the bottom line is we did as much as we possibly could in the time that we had. We had to leave the city at some point. We had to go at some point. It was just a never-ending cycle of misery. And so a decision was made, look, let's just give the city back to the Iraqi army and let's move out. I just felt indifferent, to be honest with you. I was just glad to see the back of the palace. to not have to sprint between mortar attacks just to go and take a shit. You know, like it was just nice to get to the cob where the footprint was so huge that the chances of a mortar landing on you like getting struck by lightning, and not to mention the fact that there's food there. I mean, not just food in the cookhouse, actual places where you can buy a coffee and a pizza and a milkshake. And I remember seeing a couple of US soldiers in perfect pressed uniform drinking iced lattes. And I was like, fucking hell, man, like, your experiences really do vary in war, don't they? You know? But it was nice. It's when we got to the cob. Yeah, it was such a culture shock getting to the cob. We were, all the lads that were in the palace, I think we were bored in a very short space of time because we were so on it for 3.5 months. And then you got to the cob and it was just, right, okay, what do we do now then? So we ended up just doing desert ops. We were going out most days in a Black Hawk, flying out to the Iraq-Iran border and doing cross-border smuggling, Eagle vehicle checkpoints and stuff like that. But they just like in Jarhead, they moved us after about 2 or 3 weeks of milkshakes and shit. They just moved all of us right into the middle of the desert and just stopped. And we set up a massive great leer in the middle of the desert, in the middle of nowhere. I don't know why they chose that spot, but we got given a stag position and I was asked to fucking make a range card. I just wanted to write on it absolutely fucking nothing because there's nothing in front of us, like a billiard table, you know. But yeah, it was Tale of Two Halves, the tour, really. The palace and then the cob.
Well, I mean, it's careful what you wish for, isn't it? Because like once you're out in the desert, then you're probably thinking, "Fuck this," you know.
Yeah, no, it's a weird thing, and it's a weird thing. Yeah.
So just I mean, maybe this is something that came after the tour, but like, you know, those first few months that you're talking about, extremely kinetic. Your battalion, the attached companies, I mean, obviously B Company were with you, lost several, B Company Royal Welsh lost several blokes, Royal Tank Regiment lost several blokes. I'm sure there was other regiments there who I'm not aware of who lost blokes. How did you feel that like Iraq was being portrayed in the media especially compared to Afghanistan, which was obviously by that point, you know, we're talking about a year since things have been going on in Afghanistan. Did you notice a difference in how things were being covered, and did it ever bother you? Does it bother you now?
It's the Tale of Two Halves. Like we was on take 10, you know, 10 tours in, and so it started off with go on our boys, you know, and all that sort of stuff, and then just like Vietnam, we started losing guys. The public started losing their appetite for it, and it started getting a bit of bad press in the government, and you know, like. To be honest with you, when we came back, you either had, it's a 50-50. You had half of the public were like, you know, going out there, doing a job, proud of our boys, you know, some heroes and all that sort of stuff. And the other half, the left, which had gained momentum by Optelic 10, was along the lines of baby killers, murderers, all this sort of stuff. I went out we had a night out in Cardiff just after getting back, and we all went out fancy dress to have a piss up for the boys that never made it. And whilst I was in the toilets, I heard a couple of conversations between some student types, and they were like, bunch of fucking soldiers, yeah, murderers, celebrating, the death of their mates, good, I'm fucking glad he died and stuff. And I had to keep that to myself, because if I mentioned it to the boys, it would have been a fucking bloodbath. But on the same token, like, you know, everyone's entitled to their opinion. War is not great, and the media will portray it in any which way they want, and where you choose to read your media will give you your sort of headspace, but I weren't really too fussed about either way. If someone talked down to me about Iraq and all that kind of stuff, I'd just shut them down in a fairly aggressive manner and move on, or just say to them, change the fucking subject because I don't want to talk about it. It's a weird one, really. Like, it all depends on who you're talking to, really.
Yeah, very much so, mate. And so what about when you got back then? I seem to remember as well, I think this was your battalion. You lost 2 guys just as you got back, didn't you? 2 guys going on.
Oh, mate. Yeah. There was that heartbreaking. Again, there's another heartbreaking one. Yeah. So what happened? We got back, and the rifle companies were, you got back, handed in your weapons, handed in your stuff, and then they were like, right, you can go home now. So 2 lads called Knight and Long, lovely, lovely lads, really nice blokes. They grew up together, like friends for years. and their families had put on as far as I'm aware, like a welcome home party for them type thing, and they were all waiting for these lads to get there. So they jumped in their car in such a rush to go and see their families, their mums, their dads, their loved ones, bombed it out of camp, hit a puddle, aquaplaned, and both died in the car on the side of the road. I don't know if they went down as tour casualties, but for me, until you've got a hug off your mum, I think you're still on fucking tour, right? Mm. But yeah, so sad,
man. I thought it was fucking tragic, mate. I mean, like you said, anyone's tragic, but for the parents who have thought, oh, they're home now. I mean, fuck me, mate.
No, man, isn't it?
Give us a fucking story about a Portaloo wank or something, mate, because fucking we need someone.
No, man. Yeah, we need to bring it up, bring the movie.
Yeah. So what were you feeling at the end of the tour, in your mental space?
I was all right, man. I mean, but back then when you came back off tour, I don't know what they do now, but you had decompression in Cyprus where they just lock you in a camp and encourage you to beat each other up for 3 days and with beer. And then you go home. I someone give me a proper punch. I had a black eye. I don't know who hit me, but you sort out a few scores, don't you? And yeah, like I've never had any problems for Iraq. Like the mortar in side of life. If someone slams a car door near me, my arsehole's still gonna pucker up a bit. But other than that, I don't have any flashbacks, no bad dreams, nothing like that. Whether that was because of the decompression, I don't know. But everyone handles things in different ways. But back then, when we got back, we didn't talk about our feelings. It was very unmanly. You wouldn't say, oh God, yeah, I'm a little bit like about this. I mean, for example, we had a guy in our platoon who witnessed someone get killed, and the arse fell out of his world, and he was rightly so fucking scared, and we did not support that man in any way, shape or form. We almost treated him like he was combat ineffective, and it's disgusting because we should have been putting our arm around a geezer and having a chat with him like you would now. But we didn't do mental health back then. So everyone just kept a lid on it because you didn't want to be seen as weak or, like in this alpha male environment. I don't know how many blokes were suffering when they got back, but I wasn't really one of them. I was just glad to be back, to be honest with you.
Talk a bit more about Cyprus, mate, and the thing, because I think anyone who's been through it is going to know what you're talking about then, but for someone who doesn't, it might come as a bit of a shock to them. Yeah,
so yeah, in the army's knuckle dragging way back in the day, they fixed everything with beer and time with the boys. So what they did was they would just take you to Cyprus, lock you in a camp, a forklift would come in and just put pallets of beer down, and then a couple of unfortunate comedians and maybe a singer would be booked to come in, but they would just get fucking eaten alive. And you just sat there and drank till you bled for 3 days, had fights, ate food. I remember about 2 minutes of decompression. And then, years later, I just saw one of my old squaddy mates and he pulled a picture out of me and 2 other blokes pissing on a guy who was laying on the floor. So I know I had a piss at some point, but I don't remember any of it. But what they do is, they encourage you to drink, fight, sing, get scores out, get all that stuff out your system. Anyone that's been pissing you off on tour, you'll probably have a scrap. And the idea is that you get it all out your system, and then you don't take any of that aggression home to the missus. And that's the idea behind it. Whether it works or not, I have no idea. But yeah, that's the impression.
I mean, I definitely see the logic behind it, but I think it was my mate Dave Radband who said this. He said all it does is just act as you've been violent on tour, then you're violent in Cyprus, so it makes sense that you just continue to be violent then when you then get home. It's like, all right, yeah, you've settled the score with a couple of people you don't like, but you haven't settled your scores with the world at large, have you? So
nah, it's, for a lot of people coming back, it's a different kettle of fish for everyone. Like, some blokes thought we were going to come back and it was going to be the ticker tape parade. We're all going to be fucking heroes. Everyone's singing like it's the end of World War II. But spoiler alert, no one gave a fuck. We came back and we were just home. That was it. So a lot of people were a little bit like, it was a little bit of a anticlimax coming back. Like, for me personally, everything was just overwhelming. I remember just in Tesco's with my missus, a supermarket, and just being overwhelmed by the sheer amount of choice of food that I could have and how much of it I could get in me. Because for 7 months, I'd just been trying to grab food where I could. It's stuff like that. But I was going out on the piss in London, and a firework went off above a car park, and I dived for cover behind a BMW Z3 in a puddle in my dancing kit, and I had to go home. That was in the train station. I didn't even make it to the fucking pub.
And that was soon after, was it?
Yeah. Straight after, I was going out the piss and just dived in a puddle.
What's it like now with like, do you keep in quite close contact with the lads that you serve with?
Yeah. I mean, like loads of them actually. I mean, I recently just rejoined Facebook and reconnected with loads of lads. But I had something happen to me after I left the forces. I'm probably the only person or veteran, one of the only ones that got PTSD from something that happened after the army. And because of that, I moved down to Cornwall and just pushed everyone away and isolated myself. And I've just sort of started to come out of my shell again in the last few years, or a couple of 3 years, and get myself back in the game as such. So, yeah.
So what was your reason for leaving the army?
Like a few reasons, really. I was disillusioned a little bit with the way the army was going. It was when they was bringing in the AGI system. For anyone listening, for anyone listening, this was for absolute fucking pillow biters to get one over on people that they couldn't beat up in the fucking naffy. Basically, let's be honest about it. Like the AGI was the fucking tool of the fucking pillow biter, was it not? And I started seeing pillars of the regiment, full screws sergeants that have been in forever, that everyone respected, stood outside the guard room on 6 and 10s, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? There was that.
So just explain to someone what 6 and 10s is, mate. And also, if you don't mind, just explain how, let's say, discipline was enforced before this kind of paperwork system that the AGI was.
Well, so yeah, before the paperwork system came in, it was a beautiful system where if you fucked up, you would have an old sergeant major who would offer you. I mean, so we had a Welsh sergeant major in Germany. He's called Prue Matthews, and he was fucking terrifying. And if you messed up, you would go in his office and he'd give you 3 choices. It'd be head, chest, or roll the dice. So you took a punch to the head, a punch to the chest, or you roll the dice, and it would be 1 dice plus the other one would be the amount of extras you would get or guard duties. So a lot of blokes would take the fucking punch because it was easier. And if you balls up most of the time, you would get gripped by someone and brought back in line in whatever fashion was necessary. But then they brought in this AGI system with 6 and 10s where you would have to go down to the guard room at 6 p.m. and 10 p.m. in a dress state that the person who had put you on this punishment dictated. And regardless of who you was and how senior you was, you would be treated like shit by the provost staff who ran the guard room. And it was just unnecessary bullshit and was so far removed from the green jacket way for me that it was untenable for me to stay in battalion, basically. I was going to go special forces. I was going to go for selection. I was fit enough, but I just didn't rate myself enough. I was a good soldier, and I've been told I'm a good soldier, but I just didn't rate myself. I always had imposter syndrome. And not only that, I'd seen what war was like. I've been to Iraq, and when we were kicking in doors and we were going in people's houses and pulling dads away from their families and their kids and shit, it's fucking heavy, man. And if you're SF, that's your bread and butter. You're going to do that all the time. And I thought to myself, if I get in that unit or these units, I'm going to have to do this shit all the time. And it was just not my flavour. So I thought, well, if you're not going to go SF, I'm not fucking going Brecon and doing juniors. So yeah, I just decided to do what everyone else did and done a CP course and got out.
Where did you work doing the CP?
I did, to be honest with you, I did a CP course, but because I'm 5'7" and couldn't knock out a wank, I didn't do anything massive. I didn't fancy going out to Iraq or Afghan and doing all the stuff out there again. I was looking more along the lines of corporate. I actually ended up doing more surveillance than CP just because of my background. So I did a few like matrimonial things like cheating husbands and wives and corporate stuff in London and stuff. I did a couple of bodyguarding jobs, but just like getting people from the door to the car and car to the door, like not personal principal and all that. I'm just too little.
Yeah. Get some trend down you, mate.
That's it, mate. Yeah.
So anything else that we haven't covered that you'd like to hit on, mate, before we wrap up?
Maybe the book.
Yeah, go for it, mate. Yeah. This is your opening.
Right, here we go. So I wrote a book about my time in the army. I was one of those lucky people in the forces that I was a yes man, so I put my name down for everything. And luckily for me, I got picked for quite a lot of stuff. So I had quite a varied career. And I started writing down dits when I lived in the Caribbean for a couple of years after leaving the forces. And I started writing down dits just because I knew I'd forget them at some point. And then they started to evolve into a bit of a story. And so I just kept writing it. And I put this book together. And the best way to describe it is it's a story of my time in the army, but it's like a love letter to veterans. I wanted to give something to the veteran community for veterans to be able to pick up, read my story, have a laugh, and connect to their service, their past, their friends, people they served with. Because my story isn't that unique. You know, I didn't do special forces and stuff. I'm not a fucking war hero. I don't have a massive body count. I'm just a guy. And I can tell a story in a funny way. So, like, my book is like, it's almost like my story, but told through the lens of funny dits and little sort of bite-sized chunks. I even wrote the book in a fashion so that people don't normally read books can read it. So it's very, very short little segments, little chapters and things like that. And so that people can start their literary journey, you know, reading books and get into books. And the feedback I've had from writing this book is been fantastic. A lot of people have reconnected with folks they forgot about because someone I wrote about in my book reminded them of them. And it's just been fantastic. The veterans just get in touch with me and saying, I really enjoyed the book. It's been a fantastic trip down memory lane. And I've just been encouraging anyone that's bought it just to pass it on to anyone that they think would benefit from it. Working class people, people interested in the military, people that were in the military weren't. Everyone will get on with this book. It's a nice, easy book, good read. I'm not in it for the fame. I'm not in it for the money. I want veterans to sit there and have a smile on their face and remember the good times. And that's pretty much what it's all about.
Yeah, mate, it hit the spot, mate. I mean, I had to stop and text you a few points because I was howling at some of the parts in there, mate. It really was great. But then you do hit, like you say, mate, you're an empathetic person. You hit those points really well too. I thought it was really well done, mate. So great work on that. And I will link it up for everybody down the bottom so they can go and get themselves a copy. Mate, it's been great speaking to you. Do you have any parting words of wisdom that you'd like to share with the listeners before we go? Any little things that you've picked up along the way? If not, you could just say goodbye.
I would say for rejoining Facebook and getting in touch with hundreds of veterans that I served with, I would say to veterans at the moment in this current climate, in this current world, just stay in your lane. Like, there's so much shit going on in the world with Israel, with this, with that, and stuff like that. And everyone it seems to be is getting really bent out of shape over it, especially the veteran community. Just concentrate on living your life. You only get one shot at this. Take your time, enjoy your life. Don't worry about the things that are completely out of your control. Stop stressing yourself out about it, and just enjoy your time on this earth. Really, that's all I'd say. Like, the veteran community seems to be very, very wound up tight about boats, immigrants, Israel, Gaza, Palestine, all this sort of stuff. Guys, just enjoy your time, enjoy your families. You know, just go meet up with your veteran mates, and yeah, just don't worry about all this other shit, man. There's fucking more important things going on. That's all I'd say, really.
All right, brother. Well, thanks for coming on, mate. It's been a pleasure to chat.
No worries, man.
From our two remote locations removed from the human race as much as possible.
Perfect.
All right, brother. Well, thanks for coming on, mate, and we'll catch you again soon.
Cheers, man. Thanks a lot, buddy.
All right, there we have it, guys. Thanks so much for giving up your time today to listen. Glazy, thanks for doing the same with your time to come on and tell your war stories. If any of you listening enjoyed today's episode, if you sat through a couple hours of it, you probably did, please give it a share. That's all we ask. Don't ask for your money, just a few moments of your time to share the podcast with a friend. Copy them the link directly, if possible. That'd help a lot. I do apologise again, guys, for the audio quality dropping out now and again. I've been trying to figure out ways of making it better with fucking boosters and all sorts of stuff here, and so far nothing's working. I just don't really have the time and stuff to get down to the studio as much as I'd love to, because you know Peter down there always did a fantastic job with the audio, but it's going to be a few audio hiccups or nothing, to be honest, guys, for the foreseeable future. So as I've kind of explained before, I kind of feel a real kind of time pressure for getting these interviews done, because when I've been doing the interviews of First World War and Second World War veterans, you know, that these people were interviewed in their 80s, and, you know, time goes quickly, and I want us to get our generation's war stories down while they're as fresh as possible. So if the cost of that is the audio being a little crappy now and again, unfortunately, that's going to have to be what it's going to be. But I do appreciate you listening, guys. You know, tuning in regularly. We've got a few more episodes coming out this month, trying to get 3 a month out. So thanks again so much. And until next time, please look after yourselves. Please be kind to each other. And yeah, we'll catch you again very soon.